Okay, hello and welcome to the very first Torch Snuffers Aftershow. My name is Elise Anderson, and tonight we are going to be breaking down the gameplay of the two contestants who were eliminated this week on the Survivor Game Changers premiere episode. I am joined tonight by the host of the Torch Snuffers podcast, Colin Conners. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. And we have our very first special superfan guest, four-time org champion, Patrick Haught. Patrick, how are you?
Good. I have a margarita. I'm in mourning from Wednesday.
You mean celebration,
Aren't we all?
Not in celebration.
Well, we will get to that because tonight we have the duty of breaking down the games of two huge, I think truly game-changing Survivor contestants. Spoiler alert, we have Sierra Easton from Blood vs. Water and Cambodia, who is the first boot of this season, as well as the ultimate Survivor iconic winner of Survivor Cagayan, Tony Vlachos. Terrible night on Wednesday. So we're going to get started. We're going to start with Sierra Easton, who was the first boot of the season. I know you two have very differing opinions on Sierra Easton, and I look forward to talking about that soon. But I'd like to start by just talking a little bit about who Sierra Easton is as a player throughout Blood vs. Water and Cambodia, the two seasons that she played previously. So, I don't know. I felt like on Blood vs. Water, she was a very good narrator, and she had such an evolution to those who didn't watch the season. She started out as one of those girls who you're like, I expect she's not going to last long. She's not that great at the challenges, though she is good at puzzles. And she's like one of those people who you think, oh, she's going to be one of the first few boots, and she's just going to be a loyal member. But then she completely broke out of her shell. She voted out her own mom. She forced them to go to rocks. So that's what she's well known for. Any comments from you guys?
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say she voted out her mom?
Well, that's brand new information.
I know, right? So let's talk about that, though. What do you think of Sierra voting out her mom on Survivor Blood vs. Water? Is it overhyped? Is it not talked about enough? Like, Patrick, what do you think?
I don't think it's overhyped. I think that it would without that move. So Sierra has talked about in interviews how she doesn't think that is what should define her. She thinks that the going to rocks defines her. But I don't think that any of those other things would have happened if it weren't for that move. That was the point in the game when Sierra really kind of reached her climax and then just went full force from there on out. And like you said, she had such an evolution in that game. I mean, during the casting process, she was having breakdowns. She didn't want to play. She didn't think she could do it. She had to be convinced by Jeff Probst to just suck it up and go play and to play hard. And we've never seen a player do something like that. I mean, obviously, yes, we haven't seen people play with ones they loved a lot, but there are so many players in the past that have, chosen that person from day one that they're going to remain loyal to the end and never been willing to kind of go against that. And Sierra's someone that did that, and she did it to her mom. And she truly defined, I think, she did change the game. She absolutely changed the game because she, the intensity that she came into with it and the evolution she made from this sweet and innocent and scared girl to someone that voted out her mom and went into this alone with all these people and truly used the relationships from the game and solely the game to advance herself. I just it was so cool to watch.
And I think you bring up a very good point where we've had people in the game who are like, no, I can't vote this person out. They were my day one alliance. And then here's Sierra Easton voting out her freaking mom, the person who birthed her into this world, and she's known her entire life. So I think that was, and I feel like Sierra Easton, you're right in that it shouldn't define her in a way, but it's the moment where she's like, okay, I voted out my mom. I have nothing else to lose. Might as well just go for it. Once you're past that hurdle, why not?
one thing that I want to add quick, like a lot of the shit talkers about her say like, oh, people need to stop talking about that. Like, she didn't even have to do that. Her mom would have left anyways. Even if she hadn't voted her, everyone would have understood. And that's true. Nothing would have been different if she hadn't voted her. But doing that cemented that she was willing to do anything, and it proved loyalty to allies. And as much as it may not have changed that vote, I truly think that it did change her game and made her someone that has come back twice.
Well, that's a good segue. Let's talk to one of the shit talkers. We have Colin Conners on the line.
I am. And the first thing I will say is that part of my disdain for Sierra interview stuff she did way before Blood vs. Water, where she came out against how much she didn't like gay marriage. And I have a very hard time separating stuff like that from opinions. Now, I do actually agree with Patrick, and I think Elise, we did see her evolve very well over Blood vs. Water, and she was a shy, timid girl, and we watch her grow. However, that's a very common character arc. We see it almost every season. We saw it with a Holly Hoffman. I mean, pick a season. There's always someone that's growing. And when it comes to voting out her mom, Patrick, you even said it. And her mom is going home anyways. And I don't like that that's the move that you say defines her. I would rather her get credit for the rock troll, even though I think Hayden does not get enough credit for that. And I think if Hayden would have been on the second chance ballot, that would have been kind of a interesting conundrum on how they put Hayden there. So I just don't know exactly what the hype's about, especially that second time around. The first time around, I definitely agree she should have came back for that second time. I thought her game in Cambodia was complete garbage. Her Blood vs. Water game had potential. Cambodia was garbage. And then this time around, I think she showed that maybe she's not really up to that all-star level. Is she better than possibly? But what I want to ask you, Patrick, and I want you to be honest, is the guys' alliance at the very beginning of Blood vs. Water, they had to decide on who to vote out, and they picked Rachel solely because of Tyson. If Sierra was there with like a threatening brother or something, don't you think Sierra could have just as easily been picked off then? And doesn't that say something about her gameplay, the fact that the game wasn't in her hands at all, at least until the first swap?
100%. And I guess, can I take a minute to add some context about my love for her?
Yeah, go ahead.
So absolutely, to your first point about some of her personal opinions outside of the game. I certainly do not align myself with her personal values and am a little bit like, it makes me tough to like support her as a person a lot of times because of some of her thoughts. So I guess my history with Survivor, it came on when I was 7. I watched the first 8 episodes hardcore because Mitchell Olsen was from my town. He was one of my dad's students. I knew him in real life. And so I got really connected to the show from early on. I was a super fan as a child, and I fell off it at season 8. And I did not watch it again until Blood vs. Water. When I was in college and I was flipping through TV one day and I saw Survivor on. This was 4 years ago. And I watched one episode of Blood vs. Water, and I was piecing together that people were with loved ones, and I was like, damn, I have not seen the show in so long. Like, A, I forgot how cool this is. B, I can't believe this is still on. And C, like, they're playing with loved ones. This is rad. So over that weekend, like, this was about at Merge. And I went back and I had them all like on demand on my TV. And I started from the beginning of the season. And I just binged watched that half of the season through. And I had a huge crush on Sierra. And a lot of that, like, this is where a lot of that starts from. I just thought, like, she was adorable. I loved, like, her sneakiness, her move with Katie to convince her that she had the idol, to, like, you know, like, the little things she did, and, like, just, like, her kind of adorable nature and her, like, life story was very cool to me, like, some of the things that she had been through. And I just connected with her as a person, not as a game player necessarily. I just thought that she was, like, super cool, and I had a big crush on her. And from that point, like, that was when my Survivor addiction really kicked into gear. I mean, over the last 3 years, in the 3 years since I started watching it, when that was on, 3.5, I've seen every season at least 2 or 3 times. Like, it's all I do now. And that season that season was the impetus of that. I mean, I, to this day, rank Blood vs. Water much higher than the average Joe, and it's because of, like, the nostalgia of it for me. So that was a big piece of, like, where I originally connected with her. And also, kind of, like, I do follow her outside of the game, and I've met her in real life, and, like, I she's gone on a personal journey because of her experiences in the game, where those views we've talked about have really developed and have evolved.
Mm-hmm.
She has become a more like understanding and grounded person, like in society and real life, much more so than her mom has, because of the people that she's met and the experiences she's had in the game. And I think her evolution and kind of like what being with her from day one on my Survivor journey is a big piece of like where my fandom comes in.
No, that's very fair. And I think that
but no, I do not think she's a great player at all.
Well, what you were talking about with that is I feel like when you compare someone like Hayden to someone like Sierra, I think Hayden's someone who plays very close to the chest. He's very smart. He's very strategic. Pretty much everything he does comes across as a way to like manipulate something. It's similar to like a Vetus, where it's like everything's very calculated. And Sierra isn't really, we've never really seen her be the ringleader. She's the sort of person who is willing to do whatever to get herself further in the game, but she's a good ally. She's a better ally than she is like a leader of alliances. And I think that's a good segue into Cambodia, her first time coming back, because she's most known for just being part of this Witches Coven alliance with Cass, with Abby Maria, with Kelly Wentworth. And it's something, because I think a lot of people were really high on Sierra going into that season, but it just wasn't that great because we didn't get to see that much of what she's clearly learned from Blood versus Water, but we didn't see her take that next step as much. She was just still an underdog, still being scrappy, and ended up getting taken out in the huge idol play at the merch.
Yep.
Well, and if you don't mind, I want to interject a point. Do you think maybe Sierra, so, I mean, I think we all admit she's not an amazing player. The fact that in every season she plays, she immediately winds up on the outs could be a testament to her social game not being super strong and misreading the room. Because, I mean, she misread the room extremely hardcore this first episode of Game Changers. So maybe this is a flaw with her in her gameplay. And if she would have given more time between coming back after Cambodia, maybe she would have been better at it. That's just a hype idea.
3 seasons in 4 years. Like, that's
Yeah.
not a lot of time to wisen up and reflect on what you've done in previous games.
And I'll argue that I don't think that it's the social game piece. I mean, everyone that has played with her has mentioned that they really adored her, being around her, that they connected with her well. I think that she does a great job of creating relationships. However, the density in which she has played and her willingness to go balls to the wall and do whatever does not make her someone that people want to align with.
I totally agree. And I don't know how much you guys followed the pregame stuff, but there was a lot of who do you want to vote out first? And someone who really had his eye on voting out Sierra was Malcolm, who we saw had a lot to do. Like, he was friends with Caleb, we saw in the episode, and Tony. And as soon as she comes up and is fulfilling everyone's expectations, like, oh, she's being super strategic, she's telling everyone we have to vote out Caleb. I don't think that boded well for her, who has someone who has such a big reputation as a schemer that people already had their eye on. Colin, what do you think?
Oh, I mean, I agree 150,000%. And I do think maybe there was a bit of Sierra fatigue. Everyone talks about Russell fatigue. I mean, Sierra, every single season, Jeff Probst is saying, oh, Sierra Easton voted out her mom. You know, he always interjects that. So in a way, maybe that big move that got her kind of famous in the first place could have been part of her downfall, because when you're known for that move of voting out your mom, people are going to have all these crazy preconceived notions. It reminds me of how Johnny Fairplay had the reputation of, oh, he lied about the dead grandma. And of course, that's not why he lost to Micronesia, but that was going to come up. And it's why Pinner thought he could easily beat him in the end. Because, like, hey, Johnny Fairplay is such a poop head. It doesn't matter. He could play in a brilliant game now. Or in Blood versus Water 1, Colton. Everyone was saying, no matter what Colton does this time, because his reputation was so bad in the past season, I can sit next to him at the end and I can beat him.
I don't think it helps that Probst's winner pick for both Cambodia and this season was Sierra Easton.
Yeah.
So he hypes her up a lot.
Yeah. And unlike someone like Tony, who, you know, at least won the game, Sierra, I think completely true. The overhypeness with her and the Sierra fatigue, I think, really hurt her. If she comes back 10 years from now, she could
the comment that I was just going to make was that, like, after Cambodia, I thought it was pretty clear Sierra will be back sometime. Like, she's proven that she is great on TV. She's someone that's worth returning. She plays hard. when I saw this cast like back in early spring of last year of 2016, I was not happy to see her on it, and I knew with certainty that she was going to be pre-merge. I was like, this is not a good idea. This is too soon. Because right after Cambodia, I said, I'm really excited to see Sierra come back in 3 to 5 years as someone that's about 30 years old, that has watched some more seasons, that has maybe like calmed down a little bit and doesn't have like the Survivor excitement. But I mean, she's now tied in terms of highest density with Russell and Amanda Kimmel.
Yeah.
So like it's too much too fast.
And I think one thing that's really interesting about Sierra is that when she last left off, I feel like Blood versus Water, her story arc was getting better, improving. Cambodia was such a strategic game. Everyone was playing their asses off, voting blocks this, voting blocks this. So that's where Sierra's coming from. And then she gets on this tribe who really doesn't want to stick their neck out. A lot of people are doing the Sandra, anyone but me sort of thing. And as soon as she's the first one to throw a name out there, people didn't like that. And I did hear something that before the game started, she originally said no to the call to come out here. I think they really wanted her because it is titled Game Changers, and she's known as a game changer. But I totally agree that it wasn't her time to come back. Yeah.
Well, if she ever comes back again, which I don't think she will, and
at this point,
you think she will?
I think she will, like 10 years or 5-10 years from now, being like, I'm Sierra, I'm back, I did awful my last, like a Tina Wesson thing. Like, I did awful on my returnee, but I'm here to kick ass, and she won't win, but she can make it further.
She has a ton of fans, and production loves her. She will have an invite at least.
Well, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Patrick. Production does seem to love her. I'm just worried that 10 years from now, her reputation as being voted out first could come back and make people be like, I don't like her that much. You know how people always do that? Like, when Tina got voted out first of all, so she wasn't that good. You know, people just hop on the bandwagons for whatever. Yeah. So,
and can I also add one thing just to interject off of one of Elise's comments? I mean, obviously I wasn't out there, but from what I've gathered from all of the post-game interviews, even from people that were on the tribe that weren't Sierra throwing out Tony's name is not what got her in trouble. Everyone was throwing out Tony's name on that tribe. People saying that, and the episode making it look like no one was throwing out a name was not necessarily true, and that's not what bit Sierra. What bit Sierra was saying, well, then it should be Caleb when they asked about the hidden immunity idol.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because Caleb has, from everything I've read and seen, did an absolutely phenomenal job in the first 3 days of drawing people close to him.
And honestly, who wants to get rid of Caleb? In a game with game changers, there's so much few followers and that type of people who aren't super strategic. And someone like Caleb is like currency in a game like this. And yeah, that was not a good move on her part. But I'd like to wrap this up and just say any last words to eulogize Sierra before we move on to the aforementioned Tony Vlachos.
I don't want to see her again for a very long time, and that's for her benefit and mine.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree. And she's great. She's awesome. We had a few drinks together at the Survivor finale in December, and she's amazing.
And I take your word for that, Patrick, because I've never met her personally, and the editing can be very deceptive.
She's like one of the sweetest people. I mean, just in terms of like meeting a lot of alumni and survivors there, like the way she is with fans, she's great.
That's good to hear. And from what I've heard in post-game interviews, everyone loves her, and she's been taking this really well.
Yeah.
So kudos to Sierra. Hopefully we'll see her again in the distant future. So now I'd like to move on. We have another huge character to cover in the great Team TV Tony Vlachos. So Tony, this is only his second time, which is pretty rare for Game Changers, and his first season, but he came down here with one of the biggest targets. He was known for Cagayan, which is already one of the greatest seasons of Survivor, pretty much agreed all around. He was super strategic. He was so over the radar. He was the type of person who would act first, reflect on it later, change what he's doing. He had a million different plans going at once. It ended up working for him when Wu infamously took him to the end over the unlikable cast, losing Wu $1 million, but gaining Tony's reputation in the Hall of Fame. Anyone want to comment on Tony Vlachos in Cagayan? We have a lot to talk about here.
I will say this, as someone who hosts a show talking about Survivor, I remember when we were doing the Cagayan episodes, Tony was almost an afterthought. It was all, and I will compare it politically to like a Donald Trump. Completely written off. There's no way this person can win. There's no way this person can win. And to watch that journey continue and watch him be crazy and crazy and crazy, and it still somehow worked, was an amazing thing to watch, especially in retrospect. And when you hear the post-game interviews where Spencer and Cass and a lot of other people say, honestly, that edit made us look more strategic than we actually were. Tony was out there every single day, busting his butt, looking for idols, building the alliances. And I mean, Tony played a game that seemed impossible to win, especially because Russell Hantz played a similar game and lost to a bitter jury. But yet Tony was able to do what Russell couldn't, which is played the super aggressive game, but yet do it with charm and not piss people off too bad.
Yeah, he tied into relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Tony is 100% a game changer, and that was so sad.
Yep.
100%.
He's the epitome of it. And a big reason, I mean, in addition to him being just absolutely phenomenal TV, probably the best Survivor's ever had, this coming right after Blood versus Water, it's that big piece of nostalgia for me. So I was still figuring out what Survivor had become since season 2 through 8 when I was watching Cagayan. And like you can't keep your eyes off him. He's so much fun to watch. I don't think Tony's a fantastic player. I love him. He's great entertainment, and I think that he fell into a lot of lucky situations in Cagayan that he wouldn't have been able to get out of with some smarter players in other seasons. But his adaptability and his willingness to go nonstop and all the time makes him, one of my favorites of all time. I mean, I absolutely loved watching that season, and I was so excited to have him back. And I was very confident that this was going to happen. Like, no one was going to let him get to merge.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that, again, when they were doing all the pre-game, who do you want out first? A whopping 7 people said that they wanted Tony gone first on reputation alone. But I would like to disagree with you, Patrick, on that Tony is not a great player. Because while I, like Colin, was watching through Cagayan as it was airing, thinking, no way Tony's going to win. I went to that finale thinking that Cass was going to win because no way Wu was dumb enough to bring Tony to the end, and he was playing way too hard and too fast. However, I think what's the great thing about Tony is he's just, like we mentioned, he's this bundle of energy. He just goes for it. He's charming. He'll just, he's the person who screams as soon as they hit the beach, I'm running for the idol, runs away. And I think in Cagayan, it was newbies. They were more taken aback. He kind of was able to smoke screen and confuse his opponents into just doing whatever he said and getting wrapped up in all that Tony was doing and all that was going on. But that's just not going to fly with these game changers this season. And especially having already watched Cagayan and having Tony win Cagayan, I think they were already looking for that.
And I want to jump real quick to Tony's defense as a great winner also, if you don't mind. What other winner was able to jump from alliances to alliances every single week, with Rue being the only person who consistently voted with him at every single tribal council along the way?
I think, yeah. Remember Uncle Cliffy?
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. So I think a lot of people underestimate, and when they look back, underestimate Tony's ability to forge relationships, because I think that was actually way more a key to his victory than finding the super idol and finding the idols. For some reason, something about Tony, maybe it's because he was a cop with a bunch of newbies, was able to read the room extremely well and know when people were plotting against him and all that stuff. And he was smart enough to always know what the next move was, be it get rid of LJ, because LJ, we all thought he was going to win, be it cutting off Jeffra just to make sure there couldn't have been another, female alliance. I thought the way he handled it was absolutely brilliant. And the fact that he was so big and loud the whole time, I think is even more impressive.
Yeah, and I do not argue that. I do think that he's a phenomenal winner, one of the best of all time. I just don't know if I would call him a phenomenal player, because I think he's the epitome of a one-hit wonder. I don't think that he can ever make merge again. I don't think that I mean I will go on a limb and say that he was not good this week. He was not good in this episode. Like, he made so many stupid decisions. Like,
I think that's just what Tony's like, though. He always makes a ton of mistakes. And while it didn't bite him in Cagayan because it wasn't this caliber of game player,
game changers.
Game changers. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It wasn't that caliber of player. But this, I think we just saw more of Tony, and we almost had Tony acting like Tony, amp up the craziness even a little more. And as a result, you're right, he did make a lot of mistakes this episode. It was fun to watch, don't get me wrong.
Oh my God.
Well, and I think what I want to say is that's what a lot of the analysis has been post-game on Tony, is that Tony was playing a caricature of himself. Because look back at Cagayan. He was always moving at 1,000% pace, but he was able to hold off on doing anything crazy at all until his tribe went to tribal council, and he didn't even go to tribal council until the swap. So I really do think his reputation hurt him, not only because he had the target on his back, but I really do think he was trying to be the caricature. I mean, the spy bunker, that was stupid. That was so incredibly stupid, and yet he thought that was a good idea. And Patrick, I will say, I thought Tony was playing an okay game until literally the start of the second episode, because it looked like everyone was kind of just ignoring him, even though they knew what a threat he was, in order to target Sierra. And then he had that great alliance for 2 minutes. But yeah, he completely exploded all over himself in his own game. And I think you might be right that he's a one-hit wonder, because I don't think he has.
Let's talk about that alliance, though, because I thought, perfect.
What could have been?
A way to save
himself. Exactly. It could have been.
We have Malcolm, huge threat. We have Sandra, who I think both of them, it benefited them to work together, and they both knew it. Of course, that doesn't last very long. You have Aubrey, another person who, remember, they had just gone out after watching Aubrey almost win. So when everyone's like, Aubrey should have won. So they knew what a big threat Aubrey was going to be just from recency. And then you have Beast Mode Cowboy as his BFF. And then it goes up in flames. So let's talk about that, Patrick. What did you think of, we already talked about this a little bit on the main podcast, but what did you think of the Tony listening in on Sandra and Troyzan and then immediately confronting them about it?
It was just awful. Oh God, I don't know. That alliance was a dream, and it was an alliance that all of those people need, because those are people that A, share a common target, and B, that you do not want against you in any way, shape, or form. Their absolute best bet in this game was to get together and to take out the people that are destined to be late merge in a season like this. The Haleys, the Troyzans, obviously different tribes, but the Sierra Dawn Thomases, those people that no one is going to be after right away. That was their absolute best bet if they wanted to advance in this game. He approached them and confronted them without even knowing what they were talking about. He heard his name. Yeah, but you don't know what that means. He was not hearing detailed conversation. His best bet was to go talk to Sandra the next day, but I know that's not Tony. And to just ask her, what had happened.
And, what baffled me was, they weren't even saying anything bad about Tony. And if he had just listened in, and this is a great way to test what Sandra's thinking of you, because maybe tomorrow she'll be like, hey, I was talking to Troyzan, and he said that you're not a big threat or whatever, and, we can work on this. For all he knew, she would have told him. But both of them are such stubborn players that as soon as Tony burst out of the bushes, out of nowhere, oh my God, you were talking about me. And Sandra's like, F you, I'm Sandra, I'm the queen, I don't need to deal with this shit. And while I love Sandra's move, it may hurt her down the line because Tony was such a big meat shield. Colin, what do you think?
I was actually going to just say the exact same thing, is that maybe this does hurt Sandra in the end, because Tony would be perfect for her. However, if Tony is this uncontrollable, and we've been hitting on, I don't think he was playing as himself. And we can do this great autopsy as much as you want to, but it doesn't change the fact that he was not playing the game I think we all know he was capable of. I think if he went out there 100%, with his head on his shoulders, he still would have had a really hard time. Mm-hmm. But he definitely seemed to be distracted. In his pregame interviews, he was saying, I was at 100% Cagayan. I want to be at 130% this time around, which anybody, I don't care how long you've been watching Survivor would realize what a horrible idea that would be to go into an All-Star season like that.
I think that's a similar mistake to Sierra Easton, actually. They went in like 110%. And since they already had such big reputations and people were on the lookout for them, they really needed to go in at 50. We know Tony has a great social game. He would vote out people and then the next episode be working with them. He should have focused more on his social game instead of building the spy bunker, as much as I love the spy bunker hashtag.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't know what Patrick thinks.
No.
Any last words for Tony
I'm with you.
Bulacho?
He's great. God, I hope he's back.
I do too. I think if Tony comes back, this will only help him, like this bad performance, because people may not be
He needs to give it time too.
Yeah, I was about to say he needs to come back when Sierra comes back. Season 44, 45.
I feel like Tony we could almost have back sooner than Sierra. Not that soon, but I feel like 5 years instead of 10 years, maybe.
Put him on the next fan voting.
You got to assume that whenever this show ends, they're going to go out with an all-returnee legendary season, and they're both going to be asked back.
100%. That would be amazing. Well,
along with like a quarter of this cast.
Yeah.
You gotta get your Cerise. You gotta get your Sandras.
Probably
Richard Hatch. That would be a great return.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's Colin. You had something.
I was just gonna say. I think we just hit the nail on the head with. I think the two people that failed this past week, they did it because they were just trying too hard. They were Icarus. They flew too close to the sun and they got zapped down.
And as has been said in all the interviews, the two people that have served as the faces and namesakes of the Big Moves era were the first two to go. And
now we'll have Sierra Dawn Thomas as the winner of
which I would love. She's phenomenal.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me today on the very first Torch Snuffers After Show. Look forward to doing this again, so tune in. And any last words? Anything you'd like to plug, Patrick? Twitter? Or
no, I don't do the Twitter thing. You had asked if I wanted to plug anything. That's not a thing that I do. So no.
Oh, perfect.
I'm gonna say subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe to them on YouTube. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, Patrick's gonna subscribe too.
Watch us every week. Every Wednesday we do a live.
Yeah, click wherever the button is.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.